Welcome to Prescott Today. I'm Mayor Greg Mingarelli. We're here in the iconic granite dells at the Phippen Museum. I can't wait to show you around. Come on inside and we have a great show in store. Welcome back, everyone. Prescott Today here. Now we're inside the Phippen Museum with Ed Kellerman, the director of the museum. Welcome to the show, Ed.
Thank you so much for having me.
And where are we sitting here in the Phippen right now?
Right now we're in the Ray Swanson Gallery. Ray Swanson was a cowboy artist of America and just a great supporter of the Phippen Museum. He passed away, I believe, 2006. His wife is still a great supporter of the Phippen Museum, a Phippen advisor. She helped us put together this studio replica. These are exactly how he left his paints when he passed away. That was the last time he touched his board. So this is a really accurate depiction of what you could expect to see at Ray's studio. So it's a very, very special place.
Very interesting. So Ed, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
In terms of how you got in this position. What attracted you to the museum?
Sure. Well, first of all, I was born and raised in Prescott. Graduated from Prescott High School. First serious job I ever had was with the Forest Service as a wildland firefighter on a fire tanker crew in Crown King. After doing that, my thought was turns to education and doing more of that kind of a work instead of manual labor. Forestry workers, firefighters are one of the hardest jobs that you could ever possibly imagine. Anyway, I ended up at Northern Arizona University, got my degree in public relations with an emphasis in nonprofit organizations, and I've been doing that basically here in Prescott for the last plus 20 years. So,
very good. Well, thanks for your work here at the museum. I also want to congratulate you and maybe thank you, I guess, for being on the Tourism Advisory Committee.
Absolutely.
With the City of Prescott. Very helpful.
Thank you so much. I only hope that my experience and passion for Prescott can bring something of value to the committee, position.
So I want to make sure folks know where the Phippen is. We're just near what I call the Phippen roundabout, right here off the Phippen Trail and the 89 highway.
Right.
We have the prominent statue out here in the middle of the roundabout, which remind me the name of that particular piece.
It's Cowboy in a Storm.
Cowboy in a Storm.
It was one of the last sculptures that George Phippen created, and when they wanted to do a monumental piece, it was obvious choice. It has a lot of action in it. The cattle's kind of cantilevered, the horse is all in a weird position, but it just has all of what George Phippen's artwork was all about. So we're really proud to have it out front.
It's a great piece. I always get in trouble going around the roundabout.
And trying to watch
I'm
it.
looking at the
Absolutely, I know that. And that's a great thing about it. It's got great action from all sides.
That's right. Yeah, all the way around.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us, how old is the Phippen Museum?
Well, the Phippen Museums will celebrate its 37th anniversary in October. George Phippen was a local painter and sculptor who had just a significant influence on his friends, family, and fellow artists. And so upon his passing at the early age of 50 in 1965, they were so enamored with him and inspired by his keen sense of humor, artistic talent, and just his general inspirational character that they wanted to create an institution in his name that would preserve and promote the great art of the American West. And so that's where the idea got started. Then our annual Western Art Show and Sale that we hold on the Courthouse Plaza every year, that was actually first before the museum was created. So the show came first, and after 10 years of producing that in downtown Prescott, the proceeds from that, plus community support, went to the construction of the Phippen, and we opened our doors in October of 1984.
I look forward to now taking a little tour with you around the museum to kind of see a little bit more what's going on at the museum right now.
I'd be happy.
Look forward to it.
All the framed artwork is original pieces by George Phippen or the sculptures that he created. So
wow.
We have a rolling video over here on this TV that continually rolls his sketches, and there's over, I believe, 300 pieces. So you can't sit there long enough to see all of the artwork that's on this digital version of his work. So again, just a prolific artist that was always involved. If he wasn't drawing, he was painting, and if he wasn't painting, he was sculpting. So
yeah, it's pretty incredible that he died at 50 years of age.
Right.
Yet all of the art that he created, in a short amount of time.
Sure. And I'm not positive, but I think it probably had something to do with him working with the caustic materials involved in the foundry process. You know, George, back in the day, you'd have to send your artwork, your sculptures to the West or East Coast. Those are the only places for major foundries to produce bronzes. So George was very interested in figuring out a way to do that here. And he got together with a guy named Joe Noggle and Joe Vest. They ended up opening Noggle Bronze Works. And so they started casting their own metal here in Prescott. But again, that was during the war, so a lot of the metals I think they were melting down were probably caustic. And I'm not sure that they wore the proper kind of breathing apparatus that you might use these days.
Okay.
And I don't know that for a fact,
Sure.
but it seems really kind of, why did he die at
Sure.
such an early age? But again, he was just constantly evolving artist. I think you could see that through his artwork, and gravitated more towards sculpture in his later years. So George was just a complicated figure who just continually evolved as
Sure.
an artist. So
Sure.
I find that fascinating about him as well.
Well, we probably ought to keep moving here, Ed.
Sure.
Where do you want to go
Sure,
next?
let's just look around here. This is probably one of George Phippin's most iconic pieces, and it's called Tie a Knot in Devil's Tail, created in 1959. It was a commission piece. Gail Gardner was a cowboy poet, local, you know, Gail Gardner Drive, or the road named after him. But he created a poem called The Serie Peats. It's a very popular poem that has the story of Sandy Bob and Buster Jig going down to Whiskey Row and spending some time down there. And then afterwards, this was their ride back to the Serie Peats where the devil was howling, and they caught up with him. And so this is what happens when they came into contact with the devil. And again, it's just one of his most iconic pieces. I think the thing I enjoy most is having his sketch right next to it, so you can just see all the detailed pencil work that he put into producing it before he ever laid any paint down onto the canvas. And then over here is his actual cowboy devil that's beckoning any wary cowboy. So
he would do a sketch, Ed, then he would use that as a backdrop, if you will, to paint.
Sure, it would give him a guide. Some of these sketches, we did a retrospective of his artwork on his 100th birthday. We tried to provide the sketches along each piece of finished fine art. And some of them you could see a couple of different positions for the hand where he was figuring out exactly how he wanted it,
Sure.
or how he wanted the faces turned. And it was just a way to help him kind of get the composition exactly the way he wanted it before he ever put any oil down on
Interesting.
canvas. So
Yeah.
he was very meticulous. Again, his drawings, you could see how detailed they are. He was very dedicated to getting it accurate. So all the trappings, the boots, the bridle, all of those pieces that you see on that artwork are accurate to the time that he was trying to recreate.
Sure.
So he's got a painting of the Walker party when they first came to Prescott. And again, all of the pieces, all of the clothing that they're wearing are all painted accurately. He made sure that all of that. George Phippen always said that the best compliment he ever got was from cowboys who told him he got it right.
Yeah.
That's the right kind of a bushel, that's the right kind of a scabbard, whatever it was. He always had the right trappings to go with it. So
Very
I think
authentic.
that ended up being, he was most proud of that.
Sure.
Being true to the guys who really worked cattle.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say one thing before we leave the George Phippen room is just the wide range of art. You know, he used light in something that I was seeing earlier a
Sure.
little differently, but you know, many times horses, cattle, or big range scenes, but there's a lot of different types of art here.
Right. Again, I think that's that you can actually see the evolution of his artwork by looking at the time the piece was created and how he was doing it. Some pieces he's laying on the oil, it's really heavy. Other pieces he starts to get more of a colorful aspect to his artwork. He studied with Henry Balnick and some other famous artists at the time to try to dial in those things. He was really passionate about, again, just getting it right, not just with the trappings, but also the light and those kinds of things. And so he looked for mentors to help him figure out his
Sure.
art. So
Yeah.
he was always traveling around to find out new techniques.
Yeah, very good.
So, and over here is George Phippin's studio replica. His family brought this in and set it up for us, and it's pretty accurate to how George would have his studio. he liked to have a mirror behind him as he was painting, and that would, I guess, give him some sort of perspective, depth and distance. And this piece is called, I believe, Mule Train. And there again, this is the sketch that he created to kind of give him the basic layout of what he wanted. You see how he did his different saddles here on the corner where he's just kind of sketching out.
Doodling, okay.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And again, this is basically how the setup would be for George's art studio. And now we have his actual art studio cabin that he created in 1952, hand built by himself. We had it picked up off the property over on Meadow Ridge Road and brought to the museum campus. So now we're looking at trying to refurbish that, and that's actually where these pieces all belong or were originally. So
interesting.
Yep. And the Phippen family's still just a great supporter of the Phippen Museum. They're always here from Colorado every year for the Memorial Day. I don't think they've ever had vacation on Memorial Day since probably 1974. They're just great supporters of the Phippen Museum and what we do. So we're always eternally grateful for the Phippen family and their continued support.
I really appreciate having the pencil sketch with the oil. It's really cool to kind of see.
Right. And again, he's not going into great detail. He's just picking out where he's placing things and how's that work with the whole flow of the scene. And so, again, the greatest part of his retrospective that we did for his 100th birthday was having those drawings right next to the fine art pieces, because again, that's what folks were like, oh wow, that's how he did that, and that's what he saw as important before he put the paint on to the canvas. So
interesting. We were just talking earlier before we started the show about that art show. And it was interesting to me as you were talking about that. It's really a place for kind of budding artists or artists that are trying to kind of go to the next level. And it sounded like you had a tremendous showing this year.
We did. We had just enthusiasm from participants and artists as well. You know, there's bigger shows in the country, the Coeur d'Alene and some bigger museums, the Autry. But I really think what artists like the most about our show is just kind of the hometown feel and camaraderie. I'll watch the artists walk around in the mornings together, and they'll take time to look over each other's pieces and talk about what they could do different or ideas for this. Hey, how about phthalo blue, or have you ever tried this technique? And it's a really great resource for them to come together, not only to sell their art, but also get some insight into what other people are doing, and then hopefully get their artwork in front of the right buyers and collectors, and hopefully end up in a gallery somewhere where they could be paying more attention to their artwork and not so much time out on the road. So a lot of famous artists in the past have participated in our show. Bill Nebeker, John Coleman, Martin Greeley, all got great starts with the Phippen Museum. But obviously they move on to a different level, and then so another group of up-and-coming Western artists come and participate.
It's a real tight-knit community, it sounds like, when they get together.
Absolutely.
Almost like a family reunion.
They are, and there's certainly those artists that have come for decades and decades and look forward to it every year, which made it so hard for the year that we were down with COVID to not be doing that. And again, I think that is a direct reason why we had such a great response this year and great attendance. So.
Yeah, very good. Tell me about the Cowboy Artists of America and George Phippin's relationship with that group.
Sure. So the Cowboy Artists of America actually started when 3 struggling Western artists were participating in a roundup down in Sonora, Mexico. Charlie Dye, Joe Beeler, and Johnny Hampton were watching the cowboys and horses herd the cattle, and kind of had this idea for a society of artists who were dedicated to depicting the true and capturing the American West the way it really was, in the same kind of light as their iconic heroes, artists Frederick Remington and Charlie Russell. But they realized they didn't really have the clout to do that. At the time, George Phippen was one of the most popular Western artists working. He'd created calendars for Brown and Bigelow, and was really benefited from the 1950s Western craze. So they sought him out to add credence to their effort. And met with him in 1965 at the Oak Creek Tavern in Sedona, where they talked about this group of artists they wanted to put together. And so that was the really formation for the Cowboy Artists of America. George was a co-founder and the first president, but unfortunately he passed away before he could ever serve his first term as president. So he got in there right at the very beginning of the Cowboy Artists of America.
It's pretty incredible to have the caliber of local artists of George Phippen.
Absolutely.
And then he helped create
Sure.
the Cowboy Artists of America.
Right.
And really the Phippen gets a lot of renown around the country and probably even the world. Let's talk a little bit about this hidden gem that maybe people locally don't even realize we have right here.
Right.
And even True West Magazine has also recognized you guys as well.
Sure. Well, we always appreciate recognition in national publications. It's always wonderful to see the Phippen Museum in those. And we obviously feel like it's a national treasure ourselves and a hidden gem in the Granite Dells. But I think, again, the whole idea of George Phippen focusing on the true, authentic artwork and depicting the real West that he knew and loved best is where we kind of start with. And so everything kind of follows after that. The Phippen Museum is a lot about education. We have a heritage gallery that has a lot of local and ranching cowboy history. We have our Arizona Rancher and Cowboy Hall of Fame. So folks can not only just come and look at a lot of great Western art, but see how that kind of culture ties in with what has happened here locally. So
yeah, that's some of my favorite part, by the way, Ed, is that heritage area and the Wall of Fame. I love the local history because there's so much great local history here, and so it's great that you guys do that, tie that in with the art.
Right, and see, and that was kind of the whole mission statement for the Phippen Museum was the art and heritage of the American West and how that's depicted and how that ties together. We can thank Bill and Marion Gary, Bill has passed several years ago, but he was really instrumental in helping us not only expand the museum, but putting together that heritage gallery and having those pieces that were really relevant to Prescott's history and past. So just an outstanding mentor and a great guy. So I wish we could have more people like him out here supporting the museum.
Yeah. Well, very good. So you have some of these areas where you highlight the local history. How big is the Phippen Museum? We were talking about some of the additions you've done recently, but how many square feet do you have?
The Phippen Museum probably has close to 15,000 square feet of gallery space. In addition to that, we also have our research library downstairs, and then the Kiwanis classroom where we do classes, homeschoolers come in, and adult programming as well. So.
Yeah, you have a pretty nice little event space downstairs. I've been in that space for, I think, Caborca, Mexico, Sister City, or something like that down there.
Yeah,
so.
we have a lot of rentals here that take advantage of that space. It's got a catering kitchen, so folks can come down there and hold. We've had 100th birthdays, like you said, anything with bar mitzvahs and all the like. So yeah, there's space at the Phippen Museum for folks to come take advantage of that too.
Well, very good. Let's talk a little bit about the exhibits. And kind of the different types of exhibits. You have some permanent, some rotating exhibits. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, so our permanent collection is artwork that the Phippen Museum owns, and there's a pretty detailed accession process for that. The pieces have to go through that process, and they really need to meet pretty high standards for what we look at in terms of authentic Western art. Those pieces come from pieces that we buy ourselves, and then some of them are donated from artists and collectors as well. So the rotating exhibits, on the other hand, come from outside of the museum and focus on all different kinds of landscapes, watercolors, mediums, just all kinds of different things like that. And those pieces come from collectors and artists alike as well. So we use sometimes our permanent collection will supplement those exhibits, but a lot of times those pieces are coming from outside of the state. So
really then for locals to come out here every few months would make sense because you have these rotating exhibits.
Absolutely. And that's what I think that we offer our membership too, is a variety of not only different mediums, but again, focusing on different parts of Western artwork. Art and architecture was one that we did. Under Native Skies, which was Native American artwork. We've had some we got one coming up in October that's called The River Flows, which is just made up of outstanding Western watercolor artists. I believe there's about 16 of them participating. So you can always find something new at the Phippen Museum. And that's, I think, what we offer our membership is just great variety.
When I rolled up today, Ed, I saw on the side of the Phippen Museum, Hold Your Horses exhibit and sale. Tell us a little bit about that.
Hold Your Horses is going on right now. It's an invitational exhibition and sale. It's ended up being one of our most popular exhibits that we've ever held. It's focused entirely on that great icon of the American West, the horse. and we choose artists that were specifically known for their great equine art. So there's just some great pieces involved with that show, and it's one of the most popular that we do. In fact, our opening reception on August 6th was the first we were able to hold in about a year and a half. Was really successful. We had over 250 guests and sold over 24 pieces of fine art from that, just that evening alone. So,
oh, great.
Absolutely. It was just a spectacular. You're always surprised to see what's going to happen after you've been gone for so long, but the enthusiasm and participation is still right where it ever was.
So with those art sales, I assume you can come here and buy art.
Right.
But do you also have an online component?
We do. Actually, specifically with Hold Your Horses, we offer a virtual gallery on our website. So even if you can't get to the Phippen Museum, you can still look through the artwork and check out which pieces are still available, and then make your purchase from us here at the Phippen Museum. So we're very proud of that. Actually, in the last year and a half, we've converted more to virtual presentations, tours, educational pieces, just because we weren't open and wanted to still provide enlightening experiences for our guests and members alike. Because it's a watercolor, and if you know anything about how hard it is to lay watercolor onto paper without having it run into the other colors that you're trying to put down. So Marlon Rota is our People's Choice Award winner from last year for this show, and you can see for obvious reasons why.
That's amazing. It does look like a photo.
Absolutely, absolutely. Watercolor is very unforgiving as well. Oil you can kind of manipulate and work with, but watercolors and pastels are pretty difficult to work with.
So these are both watercolors?
Yes. Yep.
Wow, that's incredible.
Isn't it though? Again, that River Flow show that we'll be doing in October features Marlon, Don Weller, and some other just outstanding watercolor art.
And is that all he does?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
This is his artwork. This is obviously many hours of perfecting his skill at laying watercolor. Again, it's just so unforgiving.
Yeah, and there's a lot of detail.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
That again, you wouldn't normally see with a watercolor.
Mm-hmm.
And just everything in between: sculpture, some a little more contemporary, oils, pastels, drawings.
So these are all with the Hold Your Horses
Right.
exhibit.
Right. All artists known specifically for their equine art.
So Sarah Phippen, who's that?
That's George Phippin's granddaughter, and we're always
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Amazingly enough, this year at our Memorial Day show and sale in May, she won Best of Show for her piece,
Oh my gosh.
which was extremely surprising for her family and just an incredible honor. She was so pleased to
That's
do
neat.
that, and she said she's the only one dumb enough to follow in her grandpa's footsteps. But
Big shoes, right?
absolutely.
Big boots.
Absolutely, but she's incredibly gifted, and we're always glad that she participates with us in our show. So.
That's interesting.
But again, the pastels, this is Dale Martin. He does more pastel artwork, sculpture, and then even a little bit more contemporary kind of looking pieces.
Okay.
And as long as we stay kind of traditional, but again, I'm trying to introduce kind of I feel like Western art is still going on today, and there's still artists
Right.
that are creating it. And so I like to do some of that as well, bring in some of the newer artists, while we still maintain our focus again on that traditional, authentic Western art that Russell and Remington were known for.
Lots of pieces in here.
Absolutely, and if you see on them, they're, whoa, hold your horses. Sorry, partner. Those
Yeah.
are the pieces that are sold, and the more tags I see up, the happier I am. That makes happy artists and happy buyers and members, and again, I think at this point we sold over 30 pieces of artwork from this show.
Okay.
So, and the proceeds from that also benefit the Phippen Museum as well.
You talked about the art show you guys do in the summer.
Right.
And then you have some of these different exhibits that roll through here,
Right.
like Hold Your Horses. What other events do you guys have throughout the
Sure.
year?
So obviously, in addition to the big Memorial Day show of our Western show, it's our most popular event, and thousands of people come to it. But we also have coming up as our annual fall gathering, which commemorates the grand opening of the Phippen Museum in 1984. We'll have Western entertainment and ranch-style dinner. Then we'll have an induction ceremony for our Arizona Rancher and Cowboy Hall of Fame. And this year's inductee is rancher Ralph Stringfield. And so that's always a popular event. We have Another, again, said the River Flows, which is really going to be a spectacular show and sale. We're really looking forward to that coming up. And then there's all our educational programming. During the last year, obviously, we kind of had to pare back. We haven't been able to offer the same kind of programming. Right now, we're down to just about, I believe we offer an art and wine class for adults. And then we have a pastel class on Tuesdays and Wednesdays downstairs. But we're ready at any point when this kind of tapers off and we're ready to get back to normal. We have lots of Saturday art and heritage programming, third Thursday dinner programs, and just the like. And they all have an educational component to them as well.
With COVID, I know you had to close and kind of, like most everyone else, difficult time to navigate having a public space open. I did notice when I walked up today that you're open. If you're vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask. If you haven't been vaccinated, you're requesting a mask, but you're pretty much open as normal otherwise?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's still not a mandate here in Arizona to put that in place. If that happens, we'll make that happen as well. But right now, we're just at that policy. If you're vaccinated, we feel pretty comfortable having you come visit. If you're not, hopefully take care of yourself and mask up and mind those social distancing, those kinds of things.
Yeah, very good. A couple times, Ed, you've mentioned membership.
Right.
Maybe our viewers aren't aware of what that looks like or how to become a member. Could you talk a little bit about membership?
Right. And this last year was really rough on us, and we did see an impact on our membership, which is understandable. If the doors are closed and you're paying for some place that's not open, I can see why some people might not want to. But it's those folks that have really been dedicated to the Phippen Museum for years and years who continually show up on our museum roster to support what we do. And it's only because they've stepped through the doors to see what the Phippen Museum is all about. And if I could encourage anybody in Prescott who hasn't been to the Phippen Museum or has been here maybe a decade ago, doesn't really know what we're up to now, you really need to come in and see what we're all about. And the Phippen sells itself. So if I can get you to walk inside the door and you come around and see what we do, I think you'll be more than convinced that we're worthy of the support and the membership. So, and membership's an easy thing to do. Actually, we made that pivot to a online store. We have our shopfippen.org, so you can go straight to there to find out the different levels of membership and how to participate. We belong to the National Association of Reciprocal Museums, which means if you get a membership to the Phippen Museum, you also get free admission to over 900 institutions, cultural experiences, aquariums all over the country. So that's a really valuable part of the membership here at the Phippen. So again, if I can just get folks to come out and then see what we do, I think a lot more local folks would be convinced to become members. So.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that, Ed. Well, we're here with the Executive Director of Phippen Museum, Ed Kellerman, and we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Prescott Today. I'm Mayor Greg Mingarelli. We're here with Ed Kellerman, who's the Executive Director for the Phippen Museum. So Ed, lots of great things that we've talked about, but one thing I want to ask you about, which is probably true of any organization, but tell me about your staff, volunteers,
Right.
Other folks that really make this work.
Sure. That's what makes me most proud of doing what I do. I have an incredible staff, volunteers, and trustees that are just the most dedicated group of thoughtful, kind-hearted people that you could possibly imagine. Again, I've worked in nonprofits here locally for the last 20 years, and I'm so incredibly fortunate to just work with such a great group of people who really care about what the Phippen Museum does and is just devoted to our mission. So again, I'm most proud of that.
Yeah, very good. Well, every good organization has some great volunteers, and Prescott, we're so fortunate to have so many great volunteers here in the city, and I'm certain you have plenty of those here. You've mentioned education in the earlier segment. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit more about education and what you guys do here in that regard.
Sure. Well, we're very fortunate here to have Neil McEwen as our education coordinator. He's also a gifted artist in his own right, but his ability to interact with folks of all ages. He has homeschoolers come and visit. We do, like I said, art and wine classes for adults. He's done sculpture presentations. He's just the guiding arm of our educational effort here at the Phippen Museum, and just an invaluable asset. Having said that, the programming has kind of tapered off for this last year or so. So again, we're still looking forward to starting back with that, but I think most of the events, activities that we hold all have an educational component to that. So I'm very proud of that as well.
This is all about preserving the Western way of life here at the Phippen Museum. But tell us about all of the civilizations and cultures that are represented here,
Sure.
and then kind of, specifically with that Western way of life, how do you go about preserving that?
Right. Well, again, our Heritage Gallery goes a long way towards helping people who haven't experienced the local culture and traditions of what's happened here in Prescott. It's just a special, we have a working chuck wagon in there. There's stories about J.C. Trujillo, George Ruffner. We have some gun displays, saddles, and just all the trappings that go along with it. There's a little piece about Tom Mix, who filmed a bunch of his classic silent films here in the Granite Dells. And basically, you can't throw a rock around here without hitting Western history. Whiskey Row, Wyatt Earp, Big Nose Kate, all of those kind of characters kind of tie into that culture as well. So really, when folks come to the Phippen Museum, it's not just a visual feast. There's this educational component that really ties in. Why is this significant, and why are you documenting this, or why are you preserving this? And it really gives folks a better idea of the whole picture of what the Phippen Museum does. So the Heritage Gallery was a no-brainer, obviously, because of just the history of Prescott and our ranching and rodeo community. The beams that you see above the Heritage Gallery were the original beams in 1984 when the Phippen Museum opened its doors. That evening, all the ranch families that were around this area showed up, brought their branding irons, and so we heated up a big flames, and they branded each of their insignias onto the porch out front to show their support for the Phippen Museum. So we didn't think, we thought we wanted to hang on to that for obvious reasons. So the beams that you see here are the ones that were used to burn their brands in.
That's great. I see the 7-Up,
There it is.
the Campwood Cattle Company,
Yep.
The Las Vegas Ranch.
Right, and obviously some of these places are, they don't exist anymore. Some of those ranches are not. And again, another reason why we kind of bring attention to the fact that it's kind of like Jerome, Did you know there was 40,000 people living on this mountain at one time when they were mining? And the fact that it got down to about, I think, 25 people in the 70s. So just kind of the same kind of thing. There was a real working ranches everywhere and people involved in doing just that. And so the fewer that we have, the more we try to concentrate on what they do and reminding people that there's still people out there doing that kind of job out in the middle of nowhere. And still just dedicated to ranching, and for very good reason too. Mm-hmm. Bill and Mary Gary, they were instrumental in the expansion of the museum and also this Heritage Gallery right here. Bill Gary was just a one-of-a-kind guy. I think he was ex-Marine and a developer here locally, but he's just that kind of guy that was black and white. He tells you the truth every time. He never beat around the bush. And he never asked anybody to do anything that he didn't already do or support himself. So that's what I always liked about him. But he made sure that we established the Heritage Gallery and put together a lot of the pieces that are, especially the guns. Bill had the biggest collection of Confederate revolvers of anyone in America. And on his passing, they broke up the collection. But for a time there, he had more of those pieces than anybody else in America. And just an incredible guy. But right here is our chuck wagon, and this was actually bought in Prescott from the Samuel Hill Hardware Company, which is right down on Whiskey Row. And to be able to have it here this many years later for people to look at, we're very proud of that as well. And these type of items, a lot of them came through the James Deepwell Ranch, and they have just been the most generous supporters that the Phippen Museum has ever known, and they continue to be to this day. So. The James family is just instrumental in not only the creation of the Phippen Museum, but perpetuating what we do here.
Right.
So
you have a sampling of saddles and ropes and bridles and spurs.
Again,
and
all the trappings that you can think of that go with it. Not all of them have a story with them. that we can identify, but you obviously see these are used. Someone wore these, someone used that. These are the real deal. And again, just gives folks that, when I get folks from overseas or back east that come and see this stuff, they just eat it up. They want to know everything there is to know about it. And that's always exciting to find someone new who was going, I want to find out more about this, and how does that work, and what do these people do? So Charlotte Hall really is the home to find out the history of downtown Prescott and kind of those kinds of things. We touch on some of that, but again, that isn't our real forte. We are art of the American West. So we try to include just enough to pick your interest about the local history without stepping out of our...
Yeah, you do have some here from the rodeo.
Well, and you know, this story of Fleming Parker, who stole George Ruffner's horse, Sure Shot, and the whole pursuit of him and how that all worked out and his hanging, just too interesting a story not to share. And then, of course, we've got a little feature of J.C. Trujillo, former director at the world's oldest rodeo and a outstanding cowboy in his own right, obviously.
Gail Steiger, I see.
Absolutely, and that's, these are all pictures of folks that have been inducted into the Rancher and Cowboy Hall of Fame.
Okay.
And
do you do that annually?
We do at our fall gathering. So like I said, this September, we'll do the big evening of events, and at the very end of the evening, we'll finish with an induction ceremony, and I think his daughter will be in attendance, and so I don't think there's very many family members left, but she will be here, and we will celebrate his contributions to the local ranching history. He was a member of the Arizona cattle growers, Yavapai cattle growers. He was the head of the Farm Bureau here locally, I believe, for like 11 years, and he also volunteered with the Prescott Police Department. So Ralph Stringfield was definitely worthy of being inducted into the Rancher and Cowboy Hall of Fame. So we'll look forward to that really soon here.
You know, it takes money for any organization to survive and thrive, as you guys do here. Tell us how funding works here. You mentioned memberships. I'm sure that's one component. But how's the Phippin funded?
Obviously, the backbone of our organization is memberships, the people who renew their memberships every year, and the local sponsors that have been so kind to us. The James Deepwell Ranch, Finley Toyota. There's just numerous organizations and businesses that help us do what we do here at the Phippin Museum. Sponsorships, and again, donations of actual fine art. There's many collectors here locally that have spent a lifetime putting together their Western art collection and want it to go somewhere where the public can see it. Perhaps their kids aren't interested in it, or perhaps, again, they just want to give it to a broader audience. So that's what the Phippin Museum offers as well. So there's a lot of different ways to contribute to the Phippin Museum. Our volunteers spend hundreds of hours helping us in all kinds of ways, including producing the Western Art Show and Sale. It just wouldn't be possible without those folks. So money's fine, but there's a lot of different ways to contribute to the Phippin Museum. We try to take advantage of all of them.
You know, there's such a great community here in Prescott around Western heritage. Ed, tell us a little bit about your relationship, the Phippin's relationship, with some of the other museums, the Charlotte Hall, among others, as well as the Western Heritage Center downtown.
Well, you know, my emphasis when I took over the directorship here at the museum was on collaborating and tying ourselves back to some of those organizations that we should be associated with, we should be collaborating with: the world's oldest rodeo, the Cowboy Poets Gathering, the Western Heritage Center. There's just a bunch of the Yavapai Cattle Growers Association. There's just a bunch of those types of organizations that not only work well with the Phippin Museum, but that we can bring some attention back to what they do. And that works for all of us. Again, we were able to put a small display down in the Western Heritage Center, which being able to have an annex like that on Whiskey Row that drives tourism out to the Phippin Museum, we're kind of out of the way. We have been kind of a single point destination where you're not really coming here unless you're coming to the Phippin Museum. Obviously, with the growth, we were like at the far north end of Prescott. Now it seems like we're becoming the south end of North Prescott.
Yeah.
And imagine that'll probably just be the way that goes in the future. We have a lot of new neighbors who've been great support for the Phippen Museum. So, with every addition of growth, it's harder to deal with infrastructure and those kind of details. That's not my bag. I'm more about these people who come from somewhere else who've particularly picked Prescott as the haven for their retirement, and when they get here, all they want to do is find out who's George Phippen, who are the cowboy artists, what's the Western lore, where is the ORO ranch, and who was here. And so that's what I enjoy the most about it too, is that I know a lot of people are concerned about the influx of newcomers, but again, some of those folks just end up being the most enthusiastic individuals you could possibly imagine, and end up knowing more about George Phippen than folks I grew up with. So that's a great part of it.
I love your approach with growth and new people, and just gives more support to the museum. For our viewers, I want to make sure that we emphasize the Western Heritage Center downtown on Whiskey Row is a great place to go to get a flavor of all of the different museums and Western heritage that we have here in Prescott, including the Phippen Museum. Ed, tell us, when are you guys open? What are your hours? So if people want to come by, they know what's going on.
Sure, we're back to normal hours of operation. We're open Tuesday through Saturday from 10 to 4 and Sundays from 1 to 4, closed on Mondays. Admission is very reasonable, $10 for adults, $8 for senior AAA members, veterans, and then $5 for students with ID. Children 12 and under are free.
Yeah, very good. And you always have some very friendly folks out here greeting people and helping them around the museum.
Absolutely. We got some wonderful docents here that are great at touring, and then again, front desk help. We have volunteers that are just instrumental in everything we do, from mailings to special events. So.
And if you're a member, I assume you get in here without being charged.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then there's a 10% discount in the museum store. Special events like opening receptions, that kind of thing, are no charge for our members as well. So there's little incentives for memberships as well.
Anything else we've forgotten to mention here, Ed, before we close up?
I think I'd probably throw out our website is phippinartmuseum.org. You can always shop with us at shopphippin.org. And again, like I said, if you haven't come out to the Phippen Museum to see what we do here, or you have, but it was been more than a decade ago, come on out and see us and see what we offer here at the Phippen Museum. It's more than just cowboy art.
Ed, thanks again for spending time with us today and talking about the museum.
Thank you, Mayor.
Great job here, great leadership for the museum. Thank you for all that you do in our community. This is such an important asset that we have in our community, and I appreciate what you do to make sure it continues to thrive and grow. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, thanks for tuning in to Prescott Today. I'm Mayor Greg Mingarelli. We'll see you next time.